This is my workspace that I use to build my hardware and electronics projects. When I first started using this space, it looked more like this, but as more and more projects and components piled up, it turned into what it looks like today. The biggest problem with keeping a workspace like this clean and tidy are these things. Small components. Each small component that I add to a project is additional table space it needs to take up, and these things tend to teleport across the table when I'm not looking. One day, as I was programming a stepper motor for an upcoming project, I finally broke down and decided to design and build a parts organizer for my workspace. Fairly recently, the back of one of my IKEA shelves had collapsed, so I decided to use that wood board as a base for my project. I measured out how large I wanted the base to be with the yardstick and then cut it with a box cutter. I probably could have used some better tools, but I was just lazy. I decided to keep the width the same as the width that it already was and just cut down the length a little bit so that it would fit 5 5-inch boxes. I then used Tinkercad to make this 3D model that I sent to my 3D printer. This top part right here takes up the majority of the space, and it's going to be a hold where I can fit my 5x5-inch boxes. I use these boxes to store a bunch of my components and tools. Then this bottom part has 3 trays where I can store small components that I'll use temporarily for a project. This part in the middle is supposed to be a place where I can add a whiteboard or paper to write temporary labels. And these grooves over here were supposed to be places where I can insert like a little cart with wheels, but I never ended up doing that. It took 3 days and around 300 grams of filament to print out all 5 of these trays. And once they finished printing, I completely ignored them for a week while I worked on other projects such as making Snake in JavaScript. See video link in description. And after that, I began the process of gluing them to the wood board. I tried using super glue at first, but it just wasn't working, so I ended up deciding to use my Type-on 3 wood glue, which has stuck pretty well. After that, I left it on the ground and waited for a day for it to dry. Now it was time for the exciting part, actually loading it up with all my items and clearing my workspace. I started by placing a bin full of my failed or test prints on the far right side. Then I filled the next 2 bins with adhesives, 1 box for tapes and another box for glues. I filled up the last 2 large boxes with my electronic components and screwdriver kit, and then placed all of my small components into the bins at the front. Now I find it much easier to keep my workspace clean. Anyways, I'm Alex Lee. This was my parts organizer for my workspace, and thanks for watching.